everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Wowhead Weekly. We're really glad that you enjoyed last week's episode and that you're stopping back to sit down with us again. And as ever, I'm joined today by Perculia, who is Wowhead's site manager. How are you doing, Perk?
Late night with the new beta build, but pretty good.
I was off sick. So I'm sorry, guys, if my voice is croaky and awful or if I sound like sick. I was off sick yesterday and I left Perk with all of this. Like, I looked at Wowhead last night when really late and just looked at the site. I was like, oh my God, what have I done to Perk?
So an amazing day for a sick day.
Yeah, so what did you have? You had, like, there was, like...
We had the 3 zone previews. So we had Ashran, Talador, and Gorgon. Then we had the patch notes. And then we had this huge beta build.
Oh, man.
So
yeah, as if that wasn't enough. It's just like, oh God, and then a huge beta build on top of that. But yeah, one of the things that we actually had a great deal of feedback about from last week's show was that obviously you all know Wowhead. Like, if you're watching this, you probably know Wowhead because you're probably watching it on Wowhead. And so you're aware of the site. But a few of you mentioned that you weren't super aware of Perk and what exactly she's done and like her WoW history and all that sort of thing. So I thought we would start this week's show by giving Perk a little bit of a chance to talk about what she does in game and also for Wowhead. So first up, you're Wowhead's site director, right?
Yep. That's
so
the title.
what does that exactly, what do you actually do as far as the site goes?
So, I wear a lot of different hats. I sort of oversee all of the content and features that are on Wowhead, so I have my hands in the news as well as guides and coordinating what sort of content Olivia and our other guide writers do. I also work with the data to determine what's the best way we should present Blizzard's data to our users, because some of the changes can be very not intuitive and confusing to users. So I also work to make sure that we're coming up with awesome tools, awesome little tweaks to our database pages, and any tools or custom work that needs to be done, like custom Lua for transmog sets or item sets, are the same model as Tab.
Yeah, and it's a lot of what you do is behind the scenes as well. Like, a lot of the big Wowhead improvements are these little things that you might not even notice them if you're not really looking for them, because the way that Perk does it is that the site just works. Like, the site is just, it's something when it's like, if something's hard to do and been done really well, you don't notice it. And that's kind of one of the perils of doing what Perk does. It's quite behind the scenes a lot of the time when she's not creating content. So talk about your WoW history now. What class? I know what classes you play, but people out there don't know. What classes are your sort of mains, or your preferred classes?
So my main is a rogue. I've been playing her since pretty early on in vanilla. And I also have a Shadow Priest, Warlock alt, and a Death Knight, but my main love is the rogue. I have several rogue alts as well. They're all night elves that look exactly the same purple hair and red streaks. And before my job at Wowhead, I raided in a fairly progressed guild. I was an officer for the top guild on the server, and that lasted about until Firelands, when I then took on this job at Wowhead, and my schedule became very on-call and unpredictable.
Yeah, exactly. But you're still raiding now, right? That's sort of still, like, you've still killed Garrosh and everything. You've been through and got the mount. I saw your post on Twitter about the mount, so you're still raiding.
Yeah, I mean, I raid when I can. I'm in a guild with, some friends that raid at a high level, and when I was free, they took me along to see Heroic Siege of Orgrimmar, and I've also found time to do, challenge modes, proving grounds, brawlers guilds. I still really like achievements. Actually, I first decided to focus on WoW and learn more about it when I won the Zulian Tiger mount back, way in vanilla. Like, I had like one epic, and then I got this mount, and I'm like, oh my God, everyone is looking at me. I need to make sure that my gear is awesome and that people think I deserve this mount. So then I started researching it, and then I found, a raiding guild that was more progressed, and collecting mounts and achievements has always been a soft spot after that.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what you do in game. Like, obviously, Perk and I, as people who both really enjoy WoW, talk about WoW quite a bit, and a lot of the, like, Perk, you're going for Khan at the moment, so it's not just raiding either, it's PvP as well.
Yeah, I've always I have fond memories of, when my heroic guild, we'd kill a new boss, we'd get our heroic items, and then we'd go into Battleground and kill everyone. And obviously that's changed now with the new PvE, PvP loot system, but I still really like PvP achievements, and Khan is something I would really like to finish. I have like 50 silver shards wins left.
Yes.
It's not super fun when people are trying to pug the legendary quest line there, but if I get that done, I'll be really excited, and I'm trying to get to 21,000 achievement points, and that will push me a bit closer to it. Got a few under left for
That's
that.
a lot of achievement points. That is a real lot of achievement points. So there we go. That's an introduction to Perk for everyone. And you can see obviously she's got a very long history of playing, far longer than me. For people who don't know my history, I started in a Burning Crusade. I've done a casual 10-man raiding, was in a very casual 10-man raiding guild. Like I say casual, but we still raided 2 to 3 nights a week, and we did normals and we did heroics, but we were never really one of those progression focused guilds, you know? We were always just like chilled, and it was friends doing stuff with friends rather than focusing hard on progressing, like serious progression. And then I got into PvP, doing arenas in the Burning Crusade, and kind of like that's been the most sort of serious part of my gameplay. It was always the arena side of things, and I've got a ton of PvP achievements on like a shaman healer. I've done some priest healing. I've done some rep paladin. More recently, I picked up a warrior, rolling flavor of the month like a boss in Warlords of Draenor. And I've also done a bunch of mage PvP, fire in late Cataclysm, and frost. Other than that, so yeah, between us, we've got quite a lot covered, really. I guess we've got the PvP side down. Perk's got the serious raiding side down. We both raid still, and yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on with us, basically. So there you go. There's a potted history, mostly of Perk, because that was the question which people had. So anyway, moving on to the proper show content. We've obviously had a huge beta build, as Perk was talking about yesterday. We've got 3 new zones. We've got Gorgrond is in, Talador is in, and Ashran is in. Now, you may have noticed on Wowhead that we had some screenshots of these zones already, and you can see those. They're all linked all over the place, and head over to our Warlords full guide at wowhead.com/warlords to check those out. But we've actually able to get into the zones and play them, or hypothetically, because I've been terribly unwell and Perk's been incredibly busy. So have you actually even had a chance to log into the beta, Perk, or not really?
So I have, but first I should mention that if you watched the show last week, we abruptly ended when there was another beta build. While that build did not have any new zones open, it did have the very awesome Corehound mount. So I just wanted to say that that was something that was very cool.
Yes, definitely. That was quite funny actually. Like last week, that wasn't the build that we're talking about right now. By the way, it was funny because we discussed that, you know, what should we do if a build happens and we need to go. And then the very first show, that's exactly what happens. But yeah, I mean, I had a chance to log on today and play around in Ashran some, but I guess, Perk, you haven't really had the time with all of this.
Yeah, it's been very unstable. I've just I tried, and I just would get DC'd constantly every few minutes. So the only thing I've really done is just, you know, data mining, ticketing, all sorts of data improvements. And I did look on the garrison a little bit, and that was quite exciting. I put it up on Wowhead. There's some really funny garrison monuments you get for achievements. And like one is the Cinder Kitten fighting with a Draenor wolf puppy and encased in bronze on a monument.
That sounds amazing. So do we know what they're for, the monuments?
We know a few of them. One is if you complete all of the mythic boss achievements. One is if you get 5,000 kills in Draenor. There are Alliance and Horde variations in color. And the pet one I just mentioned is for winning a certain number of PvP pet battles. So they've been changing every build. Now we have a lot more, so I'm excited to see where that goes to.
Yeah, speaking of the garrisons, there's been a couple of apparent. I've seen that you don't pick up your followers with like the forced choke methodology before anymore, which is nice.
People are very sad about that going away. I guess it added some flavor, but yeah, it was very creepy how you could, if you're starting a garrison mission, you have to assign a follower to it, and before you would just drag your follower and it would have this choking animation. Yeah, and
it's really
now
horrible.
It's a bit more mature.
Yeah, I think that's a good change. I'm definitely not saddened by the removal of the choke lift follower thing. But there's also in the blogs which we were talking about a moment ago, there's also been some information on the garrison outposts.
Oh yeah, so I wanted to try the new zones to learn more about these outposts, but I've just been blocked. I'll probably try again after work. But in addition to actually having your garrison base, which has all these cool buildings, there are only some buildings you can get by going out to other zones, developing your outposts, which then give you the blueprints for, you know, a building for your garrison hub. So, for example, in Gorgrond, you can complete different quest lines to develop your outpost for the lumber mill, which obviously chops down trees, or the sparring arena. And so you complete these different quest lines, you get buffs in the zone. For the lumber mill, you can access this shredder, which lets you get to zones that are, you know, that are blocked out otherwise, and you get special treasure. The sparring arena lets you free prisoners that are gladiators who give you special combat buffs. And after you do these quest lines in the zone, which differ based on which path you've chosen, then you can develop that building back in your actual garrison hub, which is in your starter zone, Shadowmoon Valley or Frostfire.
Oh,
So that seems pretty complex. I'm really curious to see how it's going to play out. Talador has something similar. You can build the armory, which apparently has bonus roll bonuses. That was a bit...
Yeah, that was a bit sort of controversial. We spoke about that briefly last week, didn't we? Where it's sort of, it does give you that, but there's so many other ways to get them that you shouldn't panic and feel like you have to do it.
Yeah, so there's the armory, which has the bonus roll part, and also some sort of transmog option, or you can get the mage tower, which lets you teleport to different parts of Draenor. So that seems to be a hard choice for me. So I want to see how that plays out.
So do I understand you correctly in that it's like a choice between the Talador ones and the Gorgrond ones?
Oh, no, it's a choice between
okay.
You know, mage tower or armory in Talador, lumber mill or sparring in Gorgrond.
I see. So you can't have both the lumber mill and the sparring arena, and you can't have both the mage tower and the armory.
Right, at the same time. I think you can tear buildings down, but we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, we haven't seen that in action just yet. That's interesting. And obviously, Gorgrond and Talador, we're out of the sort of quote-unquote faction-specific zones. I say quote-unquote because we've heard that there are actually quests for the Horde in Shadowmoon and for the Alliance in Frostfire Ridge, so there is merit for everyone being in each other's zones. It's not completely pure one side or the other. But like other than the garrison stuff, I mean, I suppose like we haven't really had a chance to go through the new zones yet. But the one thing that's really notable to me in the new zones, in Gorgrond particularly, is the sort of, I'm calling it like the Rainbow Fairy part of Gorgrond.
Oh yeah, that part is so pretty.
Oh my gosh, it's so pretty, and it's sort of like it's this zone which has been like promoted. Like Alex Afrasiabi, who's one of the creative designers, tweeted these very, very sparse images, very industrial,
very savage.
Yeah, very savage, exactly. And obviously there's a big Iron Horde presence there. But there's this zone in the sort of south east of Gorgrond, which is all like flowers and rainbows and ponds and like beautiful little fairy houses and trees, and it's just so pretty.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see that.
Yeah, exactly. Like we were going through the zone, we were doing the screenshots for our screenshot library, which again you can check out on Wowhead, and we were just finding this area, just being like, what is this? This is entirely not what I'd expected. But yeah, the only thing I've really had a chance to do so far is go into Ashran.
I wanted to ask you about that because I haven't had time for that, and I can imagine you'd be all over that.
Oh my god, it's exactly my cup of tea, as we say in England.
So what is your favorite part of Ashran so far? What are your first impressions of it?
My first impressions with Ashran, it's very, very sort of like, it's obviously very, very early on in the beta right now. It's not like a completely finished article. But it's very cool. If you've ever played League of Legends, the sort of general structure is not dissimilar to an ARAM, which is sort of this one lane fight. Obviously, you're not being given random characters. It's not similar in that regard. But you've got this one lane down the middle, which has got these towers where you're basically progressing forwards and back and either taking towers or losing them. So say the towers go from 1 to 5, starting for the Alliance, going to the Horde. The Alliance press forward and capture Tower 1, capture Tower 2, and the Horde are then like, oh my goodness, we've only got towers 3 through 5 now. We need to push back and try and fight the Alliance back down their road so that we can get Tower 2 back. And that's kind of how it works. And so you've got this central path. But there's a huge amount of carnage, as you'd expect, in the central part of the thing, with people just like piling in and fighting. And we've heard from Brian Helinka on Twitter as well as on the blog that it's limited to a 100v100. But that's pretty big. Like, that's a pretty substantial battleground. So there's an awful lot going on there, and it's also got these really cool bits which I think may appeal more to the less sort of PvP-centric player, where there's a ton of other sort of NPCs and other challenges that you can do, which are kind of around this central lane part. So, for example,
I've seen the blog on that, and I always think that would be good to entice people in that maybe would be overwhelmed by this cutthroat PvP environment, but still want to get their feet wet in PvP or, you know, get gear in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really good point. It's definitely like, you know, people who are a bit sort of intimidated by the big battles, they can just go off to the side and, you know, go find a mob and kill it. And when you're doing that, you're gaining these things called artifact fragments, which you can then take back to the staging area and exchange for items. So you can get them swapped for, there's a vendor there who's named after Jonathan LeCraft for the Alliance, at least. I haven't checked out the Horde side yet. And you can buy all sorts of things. You can buy invisibility potions. You can buy some other, like, there's an item which allows you to, and I'm just trying to remember what it's called and I can't. You could do an 8-second stun on all players in the area. It puts them to sleep for 8 seconds. I think it's called crafty
I remember
something.
it was some trinket, and I was going to ask you
Yeah.
about these because we data mined a lot of these in the past few builds, including the one last night, and I've noticed there was like an airplane, and there were these factions that were tied to Ashran, and PvP gear that was tied, and then some goggles, and then this thing that put you to sleep, and they all seem to require artifacts, or at least require you to have some rep with this faction. So I was curious how if you came across any of these items that they were
Yeah,
actually
yeah, absolutely. The faction is the Rin's Vanguard faction. I noticed in the build last night that when I was looking at it this morning that you guys had the tabard in there as well, and like a bunch of the items, like just like you say. And there's ones, the ones like the invisibility potion doesn't require any rep at all, but then things like the flute that puts everyone to sleep for 8 seconds, that requires exalted reputation. And as far as I can tell, and this is sort of tentative at the moment, because obviously we're in the early stages of a beta, but what you're doing is you're gaining that reputation by killing players, by assaulting towers, by killing NPCs, and there's a bunch of different stuff available from these vendors, all in
It
return
seems to
for...
remind me of Alterac Valley in a bit, how you could
Yeah,
do all sorts of things on the side, or summon a boss in the center, or collect, scraps for different purposes, and I like that feel.
exactly. And actually there are some other similarities to Alterac Valley, particularly from the Alliance side. And you remembered his name last time, the big tree dude that you can summon. I can only ever remember the Horde side. Sorry?
Was it Ivus the Frost?
Ivus the Frostlord,
Yes.
I think, is the Horde. Is he the Horde
Oh.
one? There's
Oh,
a
dear.
tree guy that you can summon, and there's one of the Draenor Ancients. There's a huge Draenor Ancient, who's the tree mobs that you get in Shadowmoon Valley, who's just like stomping around, and he's the Alliance Guardian. And he just reminded me of the tree guy from Alterac Valley, that you have to summon him and get 10 players to summon him, and you'll have to get the staff, and that was really cool. And like just being able to, without participating in the main battle, being able to just like contribute and aid your team with these sort of special items and so on and so forth. Well, the only thing I didn't notice was whether there was any sort of contribution to the fight coming from, like, say, Alliance is falling behind a little bit. Maybe I can collect some stuff up and make them stronger. I haven't noticed that yet, and that was something that was talked about, but that I haven't seen in action just yet.
So one thing that I read in the Ashran blog yesterday was that apparently if you go below 100 resources, these NPCs appear that help you that are commanders, and the commanders are named after well-known PvPers.
Yes.
Did you come across any of these?
No, I didn't yet. The battles which I've been in so far, again, only on the Alliance side. I haven't been on the Horde side just yet. I play both factions, but the Alliance is my favourite. That I haven't seen them appear, simply because the battles seem to be over before that 100 resource drop happens, or possibly simply because the resource system hasn't been implemented very well yet. Like there's a count, like how in Battlegrounds you get that counter which tells you like 1600 and at the top. That was there very intermittently for me, so I'm beginning to wonder whether the resource system isn't actually fully implemented just yet. But the only one I saw which made me think, oh, maybe, was that the Horde got down to 120 resources at one point when it suddenly flashed up. But unfortunately that wasn't low enough to get any NPCs in. And I've heard that there are other, like we've got a bunch of very well-known PvPers who are represented in NPCs, so I don't know whether they will appear randomly or exclusively when they get these sort of this resource drop happening. But it's really fun. Honestly, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. And the other thing I haven't seen, and do you remember there were these items that we data mined for Ashran, like the crazy staff that allowed priests to fly?
Oh yeah, I noticed something in the data about this. So a few weeks ago, we data mined this priest staff that gave you levitate and a paladin mace that sent you to a jailer. And it looks like some of these IDs have been changed and reused for class books. I don't know if you saw those in Ashran, but apparently there are these zone-wide class books that enhance your abilities in certain ways, but only in Ashran.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I noticed some Ashran-specific books in there, but I didn't realize that those item IDs had been reused. So
Yeah,
maybe they decided,
sort of sad.
yeah, it is kind of sad, but maybe they just decided that sort of stuff was just too strong. So they were very powerful buffs that people were being given by those.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a ton of good stuff in there, and there's definitely the Ashran rep grinds, which actually, and I know we've seen these in the data as well. There's actually specific Ashran items which you can buy when you get to the Exalted with the Rin's Vanguard, which are they're the same item level as Conquest gear. So if you even like so Conquest gear is the stuff that you only normally can earn from arenas and rated battleground. Viewers weren't aware of that. But these allow you to earn this just through doing Ashran rep. So just through a rep grind, you can get this gear. And I think that that's pretty cool. I think that's pretty awesome. Like a great way to get really high-end PvP gear.
Yeah, I think that's really good, especially, if arenas aren't your cup of tea
Yeah.
or, you like PvPing but don't have a large group to go with. You can get your feet wet and get some decent gear if you really like world PvP and just want to, if you have spare time, you can just hop into this, area and get yourself some high-level gear.
Yeah.
After, obviously a lot of time being spent in there.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't seem like the Rin's Vanguard reputation, or like, I don't know the equivalent Horde faction. Did we data mine?
I think it's Vol'jin's something, but it is Vol'jin.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
So I don't know how fast you get that reputation, but it would seem like something that's going to take a while based on rep grinds in WoW, which I know Perk has done a lot of.
Yeah, I'm also, we're working on a transmog guide, and the models for this gear on the beta look like, nice, but sort of generic dungeon gear. So maybe if you do your arenas or rated battlegrounds, your gear will look fancier.
Yeah.
We were too early to say, but I did find it interesting that the gear that was being sold on the beta for PvP was fairly generic looking.
Dull. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, speaking of the latest build, we've had a ton of sort of like, obviously we've got these whole big zones, which I promise we'll explore these. There's no world in which Perk and I aren't going to be going through these zones and giving you lots of information on them. But even just from the data mining and from initial looking around, we've got a bunch of like really interesting little things that have come up. So one of the first things that we actually posted on Wowhead today, one of our guys who's our feedback manager, Gontier, has posted on Twitter this portal that has just appeared out of the blue outside of Stormwind.
Yeah,
so
it's creepy.
What was that?
It looked very creepy to me. It looked like either it was the Darkmoon Fair because it had these purple tents,
Right.
but it had these vines around it that reminded me of a bit of Gorgrond in the area with the rainbows and the fairies, almost these strange curly things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like other sort of clue seeking, that like there's a griffin on a little griffin nest there, which implies to me that there may be a flight path coming. So whatever is there, like it's probably going to be significant enough that it needs a flight path. I had the brainwave of suddenly thinking, I wonder if they've just moved the mage portals out of the tower because they're kind of hard to find there. And I was thinking, maybe that's it. But no, I made a mage and I ported my mage back to Stormwind, and that was definitely not it. There are a few dungeons which may well have portals like this in the world, but we just don't know what it is. We'll be sure to let you know if we do. But there's a bunch of other stuff, like Perk, I know you do the highlights of the build, that you tweeted a couple of things, like this ring, tell us about this ring, this fell elf thing.
So we found a few vanity items, and this one really cool item is a ring, and when you use it, the use effect on Wowhead says that it turns you into this NPC that has a unique fell elf model. So it's a blood elf, but her skin has a weird tone. She has these demon hunter markings on her chest, and her arms are, green and black and scaly, and she has this unique robe on and horns. So I think she looks really awesome.
Yeah.
And based on the data, it looks like if you put this broken-hearted ring on, you can turn into this corrupted-looking NPC, which is, I think, pretty cool.
That is really awesome. And there was a bunch of stuff that was the noble tagged gear as well, right? This sort of noble blank gear.
Yeah, I was really excited about that. So I've always been talking about wanting more holidays, more vanity items, and I saw these clothes that were like noblewoman's gear, and in the 3D model viewer, it looked like the Gilneas fashions. So you see the NPCs wearing these very sort of elaborate, nice dresses and suits, but you can't actually get them in game. So I was really excited, and I tweeted thinking maybe this was like a Noble Garden reward because, Noble Woman, Noble Garden.
Yeah,
and they said No, it's not Noble Garden, but they're tied to the Dark Moon Fair. So I'm really excited to go
Oh,
to the fair when it's back, up on beta and see how you can get them. Because we
definitely.
had a lot of fun finding the Dark Moon Fair mini game last month on beta.
Yes, we did. Running around with our water walking and our like whatever
Yeah,
those little bunny bomb things were. They were
the
brilliant.
Magic Bunny hat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And there's been also the riding crops are back, which is cool. Ashran only. And certainly from my perspective, that's very interesting as like PvP is, instant mount items such as the Witch's Broom that you get around Hallow's End are always sort of very controversial in PvP and problematic because they allow you to get out of trouble so quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's sort of, it's really interesting to see that coming back for Ashran only. And I think that the Ashran zone, sorry, we keep talking about Ashran, but it's cool. It's exciting. It's sort of something which allows the designers to just be very much like, oh, here's a crazy idea. Let's do it on Ashran. Like if it's crazy and PvP related, it's probably going to be on Ashran. And I think that that's really awesome. Like it's just a sort of PvP playground where they can do stuff like allow you to mount instantly without it being the huge problem for rated PvP. And I think that that's really good. But also, so speaking of the holiday stuff, we've actually had a few other holiday things coming in. There's the Firebird minigame. Is that holiday related, do you think?
That is the Dark Moon Fair minigame, I think, based on
Right.
achievement names, but I mean, it is pretty cool. I like having the Dark Moon Fair being kept fresh as well. Apparently, you get these wings on your back if you complete something called Firebird challenges, and there are achievements for doing various things with varying amounts of rings. So that I'm sure the vanity item looks very pretty,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that the mini game will be very fiery and sparkly and fun to screenshot as well.
That sounds really cool. And there was also a tweet today, which actually followed on from a tweet about 14 hours ago when we were looking at it. So late last night, talking about the Hallow's End. They were talking about what NPC would you like to see dressed up for Halloween, and then he's like, "All right, we've got the answer in." So that's really exciting as well. Like I completely agree with Perk that the holidays have been long overdue for some updates. Like I sort of got everything I wanted out of them like 5 years ago and haven't really played them again since. Maybe not
Yeah, I
quite
mean,
that
we
long.
touched on this a little at the end of our show last week, how, Gaze of the Black Prince was nice, but we want more, exciting world events. And
Yeah.
hey, the holidays are cool, they should get an update. And it was really neat to see that there were these vanity items for different holidays, as well as Blizzard developer tweets on more updates coming. Like we
Yeah.
found a transmoggable hat for Pilgrim's Bounty. We found a silver turkey shooter that turns your target into a turkey. We found another Love is in the Air pet. We found it was like some pink Strider mini pet to go with your pink mount. And we also did find some Noble Garden things like some items related to eggs as well as a bouquet of flowers.
Oh,
So
cool. And
I'm really excited and I want to see more items in future builds.
absolutely, yeah. And speaking of pets, there's been a couple of interesting things. There's been a pet called Sid the Squid. Is
Yeah.
what's all that about? Do we know anything
That
about
is
that?
an amazing model. So I'm looking at the pet journal. It is from the Greater Dark Moon Fair Pet Supplies. So we will probably be getting another pet challenge in the Dark Moon Fair. I know the Jeremy Fiesel one people found pretty challenging, and we have a data mine NPC that he's leveled up, so maybe he has a new set of challenges.
Oh, wow.
And the Sid the Squid is very sort of interesting tentacle, very
Hmm.
elegant tentacles on it, and yeah, it has a really neat model, which you can see on the Wowhead page, and apparently that will be the special reward for defeating this pet challenge.
Fantastic. And there's also been, just on the last thing on pets, some Perky Pug costumes. That you can dress up your Perky Pug in various different costumes if you wish to, which I think that's just adorable. I
Yeah.
really hope that like leads the way for other pet costumes. I want to be able to put hats on pets. That's what I
Yeah,
want.
I think this came about again on Twitter. People were asking if the Pet Menagerie would have all the perky pet costumes that you could currently buy in the Timeless Isle, and when that was confirmed, people were like, "Hey, what about other pet options to dress up?" So, the I think Jonathan LeCraft tweeted some pictures of the perky pet dressed up with these new disguises, and then we data mined the spells tied to these disguises a few days later.
Fantastic. Yeah, so there's a ton of like pet battle stuff, ton of item stuff. We've also seen a few profession updates as well. Again, check out the post for these. There's a bunch of information there on what you can make, and I feel like there's definitely a focus going from professions away from like, oh well, I'm raiding, so I need to be an engineer or I need to be whatever, towards actually just making stuff to sell, which I think that's really cool. And I think that's more like what professions should be like. And Blizzard have definitely talked about this in the past. So check out the post on Wowhead. There's a ton of information there that you can find out all about the new profession items, everything from the latest build, everything that's cool from the latest build as well. And speaking of things on Wowhead, we had our giveaway in the last show, so thank you so much to everyone who participated. I know, Perk, you had a bunch of interesting like stuff coming back to you about the Cursed Division of Sargeras.
Yeah, that was really neat.
Yeah, it was really
all
nice.
Sorts of creative phrasings of it, saying, "Hey, I want to collect this tuner. I want this for my transmog." So that was pretty nice.
Yeah, and congratulations to the 5 winners of those, 5 for me and 5 for Perk. So that was really fun. We don't have a show-specific giveaway this week, but we do still have the Wowhead giveaway. We've got 2,000 keys to give away on Wowhead, which we're doing in short chunks, and we're giving you tasks to do. As we were talking about last week, we're giving you tasks to do to win these keys. So you should definitely go onto Wowhead, check out the beta key giveaway post, and we're asking you to explore Outland at the moment, aren't we?
That was last week.
Oh, that's last week. Sorry, I mixed up.
Because we data mined that Corehound pet, Corehound mount, we were like, you should go to instances where there are these really awesome, iconic Corehounds like Molten Core, UBRS, Blackwing Lair, and, just complete several of these instances, and then you can enter in.
There you go. And like we were saying previously, if you verified your character already, you don't have to verify it again. You just need to make sure that you've gone and soloed some of these old raids. And it's really fun, like checking these old raids out and having finding Corehounds. So the other thing, we do have a fun announcement this week as far as Wowhead goes. And that you may remember that last year at this thing called BlizzCon, like there was a convention or something. There was a convention, but before the convention was the really important thing, which was the Wowhead party. And so we're doing this again this year. We're teaming up with WoW Insider. So just like last year, it's going to be at the Annabella, right? So we've got the patio and the pool of the Annabella.
Even more space than before.
Yes, that's really important to note. So we've actually we've got the internal part of the Annabella's sort of restaurant area, I suppose you'd call it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, the part right next to the pool.
Yeah, so we've got that internal area as well. So we've got even more space this year than we did last year. We're going to have a lot of the same stuff going on. It's going to be very similar. We're going to have some fun giveaways. We're going to have some fun swag to give to people. I'll probably be on the stage shouting myself hoarse again, making people play rock, paper, scissors. And Perk will be around like giving out some cool items. We can't reveal too much yet, so we're just sort of keeping it under our pretend hats. But don't worry, there's going to be a bunch of cool things. So it's on a Thursday night. Last year it started at 7, I think, Perk?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's when it was. We'll have the exact times posted on Wowhead as it gets closer. But yeah, that evening, keep it free. Get dinner, get your tickets, stop by at the Wowhead party.
Yeah, come see us, come say hi. Maybe we'll have something cool to give you in return. You never know. But yeah, so do definitely come and join us. Mark it in your diaries now, and we'll see what happens closer to the time. So moving back on to the non-specific Wowhead stuff. We have some kind of semi-Wowhead related things, and then we've got the new, with this most recent build, the new Draenei Female and Undead Female models appearing in the data. So Perk, I know that people have been asking a lot of questions as we had an art craft on those, both the, particularly the Undead Female, where people were trying to sort of say, oh, so why don't you have them in the model viewer yet? This is the point at which that happens, right? This is the point at which we can do that.
Right, so Blizzard was saying that they said prior to the build going up that this was the build that you could actually see the models for the first time. And so we were prepared to have them up finally on the site. We can't get them if there's an art craft going on, that doesn't necessarily mean that we'll see them on Wowhead right after. But they are finally on the site, and you can check them out. Any page that has a View in 3D button, you can click on it, select, Draenei or Undead, and then the Warlords option and see it. You can even see what your own character will look like with all their updated facial features and hair colors and hairstyles if you go to wowhead.com/list and then just input your character information, realm and name, and it automatically pops up.
Yeah, exactly. So you could definitely it's really cool. You can actually plug in your character, and we're really getting there with the character models now. Obviously, there are some that aren't being updated. So if you have a woblin, a goblin or a worgen. Those aren't going to be updated. But everything else is coming, and we're really getting to the point now where we've got a lot of the new models. So go put your character into the profiler, check out the Warlords version of it. And like I've been doing that today because I have a lot of undead female characters. Undead is a really strong PvP race right now. So a lot of undead female characters. So, I mean, I know you play a ton of Night Elves. Do you have any Draenei? What's your take on the Draenei characters?
So I know that there's some graphical issues where sometimes their hair is not present on the beta, but it seems that Noxie, who is the site artist for Wowhead, has tons of Draenei, and she really likes how they look. She's always wanted pink hair for the Draenei, and the white hair has now this sort of pink-purple tint to it. So she's really happy with that. I have checked out some of the animations. The dance animation is very animated. There's some great, really expressive facial features. Yeah. So I think they look good. I'm just not sure if, someone that's always been in love with their Draenei's white hair, if they'll suddenly be shocked with, this hair color change.
Definitely.
But yeah, also with the Undead, I did notice on Twitter that the art team was saying that they still have to do a pass on the Undead expressions. Some people were saying that they had these sort of surprised face for their Undead, and now that looks quite peaceful. And they say that there's some tweaks coming for that.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad to hear that, actually, because I was sort of looking at the Undead, and I actually copied a couple of characters over to the beta, which were Undead females. And I was sort of looking at the faces and thinking, these aren't really my characters. And it's obviously, like, one gets very attached to your character and how you perceive your character and how you sort of think your character looks. And, like, my mage particularly had this one undead face, which is like the X face, the leather straps X face, which I love. And it sort of had this gleeful smirk about it. And it was always sort of like, looked like they were chuckling to themselves behind this sort of X-shaped black cross on their face. And that's kind of gone. Like, they just could look kind of melancholy now. And I was really sad. I was sort of looking at that thinking, oh, this isn't my, like, gleeful, evil, undead mage that I love. This is something else entirely. But yeah, there's definitely, the Draenei look great, in my opinion. I love the super animated faces. And I think they've definitely done some changes to the very, very, very arched back. That seems to be a little bit more natural now, which I kind of like.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And the undead lady, she seems to have, she's definitely had some shape changes in the sort of backside department, which I'm not so sure on because she's meant to be a zombie. Maybe she's a zombie of someone who had a really good bum in their real life. But there's definitely some big changes there. They seem to be more bony almost. Like, everyone expected them to wind back the skeleton appears through clothing thing. But if anything, they seem to have gone really big with it. Like, the toes are so disgusting. Like, they kind of had the cones on the fingers, and that was just like, it just looks like they've got those crisps, those bugle crisps on their fingers.
Right.
But now they've actually really, like, it really looks like exposed bone. Like, they've really gone, like, go big or go home with that. And it's kind of like, ooh, gross.
That could be a little disconcerting.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess they've decayed more since
well, it's been a while, I've had that undead mage for a really long time now. So maybe that's it. It's just further decomposition. But yeah, there's definitely, do check out the models, and particularly like me, if you play a lot of any kind of one character, it's really nice to look at the character and see what they'll look like in Draenor if you don't have access to the beta just yet. And we've also had some interesting updates to some other elements of the UI in the beta. I know you've been looking into particularly the group finder updates.
Yeah, we have a UI post coming soon covering all the comprehensive updates, but we found really interesting Group Finder things that we shared first. So previously when we saw the Group Finder UI, it was just one panel that had everything mixed up, arena and raiding and questing in the same panel. But now you can access it with a special sort of dungeon and raid finder, lists all the PvE options, and then the PvP group finder, that's a separate panel now, and the group finder for that is split out and has arena, skirmishes, rated battlegrounds displayed separately. So the group finder seems to have expanded, in fact, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's sort of that split out between PvP and PvE is really good. Like, it just makes, like, the way that the panels are was kind of confusing at first. Like, it took me a couple of tries to actually find the PvP tab on the group finder panel. So I'm happy to see that they sort of split it all out and it's much more divided now. Like, that's cool to me. It's important to note, though, that the one thing that I think people were most happy about with this, the item level restrictions,
Oh yeah,
very
I'm glad
much still
that's
there.
still there.
Yeah, very much still there. And I even went onto the beta and tried to make a group with an item level higher than my own, and it absolutely did not work.
Good. I'm glad that's
So it definitely is still in there. The other thing we wanted to talk about this week, we posted about these, we found some fun kind of jumping, we're calling them jumping puzzles, but I'm making like bunny ear fingers at the jumping puzzles.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what Blizzard called it. One of the
Right.
devs joined Twitter, and the other dev said that he was responsible for some of the jumping puzzles, so we just sort of ran with that term. But, what are these puzzles, and do you think that they're that challenging? Do they really deserve to be called jumping puzzles?
Well, I mean, like if you compare them to the ones that you see, like the Wildstar Explorer puzzles and the Guild Wars 2 jumping puzzles, the only one to me that even comes close is the one which is the Crag Leaper puzzle, which is at the eastern end of the Daggermore Ravine in obviously Frostfire Ridge, and it's there, and you've got these spears that have like been rammed into this stone wall. And so there's obviously like you've got to jump from spear to spear. They're very, very, the things you stand on are very, very tiny. The gaps between them are very, very not tiny. And it's even difficult to even just jump onto it in the first place. Like that's actually really tricky. I did find that once you got to one particular spear, you could actually just run up the rest. But
Interesting.
yeah,
Well,
so maybe not jumping as such, but it was definitely a pain. It took me, I would say it probably took me 10 to 15 tries to actually get up there and get the chest. So that one's certainly tricky. But I know that you discovered one in Shadow Moon Valley around by that really, really pretty tree,
yeah,
right?
it was, there was this pretty tree. You go up a hill, and for the base of the hill, you notice that there is this cave stuck right in the middle of it. And the only way you can get to it is if you jump off the hill at a certain angle and land on a rock ledge and then jump your way up into the cave opening. And I know people have found it challenging, but maybe I got lucky. I just sort of jumped the correct way the first time. And inside the cave is this Hypnotoad who drops these really cool goggles that can charm critters.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
the reward is totally worth doing. Maybe they'll, I don't know, change the rocks so it's harder to jump on them. But
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be worse than it was.
So totally, and like, because when you think of a jumping puzzle, I think you probably think of something that's relatively challenging. And I found with that one, like, I jumped off. Like, Perk told me where it was because I didn't know where it was. So I went up there. I jumped off onto a tree, and then I jumped from the tree to the rock. And it's like it's just literally like if you happen to jump at the wrong time and miss, it's a really long run back. Like it's a really long run back to actually start again. I don't know about you, Perk, but I couldn't access it from the ground at all. Like you have to jump
No.
down from above. So you've got to run all the way around and back up the hill to get back to it. So if you do mess it up, it's going to be really annoying. Unlike the spear one where you're standing right there. But yeah, I also found it very straightforward. And then the other thing we found that wasn't even, I don't even know if we can refer to this as a jumping puzzle. It's a chest you can get which requires you to jump.
Well,
I suppose.
so you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, you have to start somewhere. So, like, I suppose like, it kind of reminds me of Timeless Isle, where you've got the pillars, and then you've got the ropes, and then you've got the flying thing. Like, and you have to do them in that order to get the chests. And you know, the pillars one is really easy, but it still requires jumping. This requires less jumping than that, but it does give you a chest which has a really awesome ice block in it.
Yes. A rapidly melting ice block.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I don't know about you, Perk. Perk told me about this. So Perk's the one who found this. And you were telling me about it, and I just didn't understand at all what you were talking about. Like you're saying it melts, and I was like, what? Like, because you said ice block, and I thought, oh, like for a mage. Oh, maybe it's an ice block that like goes on you and it's like, you know, does something or appears on the ground when you click it, and all it does is melt.
Yeah, you jump onto this chair that's overlooking an arena area, and you just pick up a drink, and inside the drink is this ice block that melts in your bag. It's literally an ice block.
Yeah, it's literally an ice block. It literally just melts. But yeah, there's also some loot to be got from doing the, I should mention that. There's some loot to be got from doing these things, like if you get lucky. And there's definitely garrison resources and there's definitely gold. But yeah, I would love to see more of these. Like, I think they're so fun. And I think they're a really, like, I know that the subject of flying in Draenor is super, super controversial.
Yeah.
Like, crazy controversial. And, like, personally, I'm fine with it initially, but I don't want to have a never, ever flying. Like, I want it to be phased in. You know, I want to be able to fly soon. But having said that, I think that adding things like jumping puzzles is a really, really cool thing that supports no flying, at least temporarily.
Yeah, it would be neat if when flying is phased in, if there was some way you could get, I don't know, people a feat of strength or change it to make people feel special that they got the puzzles done before, it became super easy to fly in and get them done.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. That would be really cool if you had like a little feat of strength for getting all the jumping puzzles done before flying came in. That's a really nice idea. I like that. But yeah, so that's all from us this week. Thank you so much again for tuning in. We hope you like the show, and you can follow me on Twitter at Olivia D. Grace. Again, it's below the screen. I always do it on the wrong side. It's below the screen down there. And you can follow Perk on Perculia. It's above her screen. And then we would really love, we had a few questions this week, but we'd love to see some more. Tweet us your questions. You could tweet them to me or to Perk, or even to Wowhead. Tweet them at Wowhead. And we're going to use a hashtag for this as well, because it worked really well for the giveaway. It's going to be hashtag #WH Weekly. So W for Wowhead, H for Head Weekly.
Yep.
And we'll have a look at those questions, and we'll answer your questions about the beta, about anything at all. Just ask away and we'll put them in next week's show. So do drop us a follow on Twitter if you enjoyed the show. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to get notified whenever we upload new videos. And of course, you can find us, you can find me, you can find Perk and everything else on wowhead.com. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.